My daughter had arranged everything. The dress, the car, even the small pearl earrings she left on my kitchen counter with a note that said, "Wear these, Mom, they're classier than yours." I should have noticed then. I should have paid attention to the way she controlled every detail of that evening. The way a person controls something they're afraid might embarrass them. But I didn't notice. I was too busy being proud. The dinner was at the Harbourview Grand, a place I had driven past 100 times in 30 years and never once stepped inside. Vanessa had booked the entire third-floor ballroom for her company's launch event. 112 guests, she told me on the phone that morning. Investors, partners, city council members, people from the mayor's office. She said it like she was reading from a guest list she had memorized, each name a small victory she was adding to a pile. "You'll sit at table 4, she said. "Don't worry about talking to anyone. Just smile." I remember thinking that was an odd thing to say to your mother. I am 68 years old. I was a nurse for 31 years, and before that I raised Vanessa mostly alone after her father passed when she was 9. I know how to talk to people. I have held the hands of dying strangers and found the right words in the worst possible moments. I am not the kind of woman who needs to be told to smile and stay quiet. But she was nervous, I told myself. She was launching her company. People get strange when they're nervous. So I wore the pearl earrings. I let the car service she sent take me downtown. I sat at table 4 and I watched my daughter work the room in a red dress that cost more than my first car. And I felt something I can only describe as bittersweet pride, the kind that lives right next to a worry you haven't named yet. The dinner was halfway through when Vanessa brought them over. 3 men in dark suits, the kind that look hand-tailored, and a woman with silver hair who carried herself like someone used to being the most important person in any room. Vanessa had her hand on the arm of the oldest man, laughing at something he had said, and then she turned and saw me watching from table 4. She didn't hesitate. That's what I remember most. She didn't pause or look uncomfortable. She just steered the group toward my table with a smile I had never seen on her face before, smooth and practiced, and completely unfamiliar. "And this," she said, gesturing toward me the way you gesture toward a piece of furniture you're proud of, "is Dorothy. She kept our family home for 30 years, practically raised me." She laughed lightly. "We don't know what we'd do without her." The oldest man smiled at me. "Loyal staff is so hard to find these days," he said. I sat very still. Vanessa moved on before I could speak. She was already turning back toward the silver-haired woman, laughing again, and the 4 of them drifted away like I was a pleasant background detail they had noticed and moved past. I sat at table 4 for a long time after that. The woman next to me, I never learned her name, touched my arm gently. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked. "Fine," I said. "Just tired." I wasn't tired. I was doing the thing I learned to do in 31 years of nursing, the thing you do when something is too large to feel all at once. You put it somewhere. You fold it up very small, and you put it in a place where it won't interfere with what needs to happen next. What needed to happen next was that I needed to stay at that dinner for 2 more hours, without crying or standing up and walking out. Because Vanessa was watching, I could feel it, and I was not going to give her a scene she would have to explain. So I ate my salmon, and I drank half a glass of wine, and I watched my daughter shake hands and accept compliments and build her empire, and I thought about the year she was 9 years old, and I worked double shifts at Memorial for 6 months straight so she could stay in the school she loved instead of transferring to the district school 3 miles away. I thought about the ACT prep books I bought used and then read myself, so I could quiz her on weekends. I thought about the 12-hour drive to Raleigh when she got into NC State, my car packed with everything she owned, and how I cried the whole way home, not sad crying, proud crying, and stopped at a diner in Fayetteville and ate pancakes alone at 9 in the morning because I didn't want to go straight back to a quiet house. I thought about a lot of things sitting at table 4. It was nearly 10 o'clock when a man sat down across from me. The chair had been empty all evening. He was somewhere in his mid-50s, with the kind of face that doesn't announce itself, the sort of person you'd forget in a crowd if not for his eyes, which were paying very close attention to everything. He set a water glass down and looked at me directly. "Mrs. Chambers," he said. "Not a question." "Yes. My name is Richard Okafor. I'm sorry to approach you this way." He said it quietly. "The way you say something you've rehearsed but still feel uncomfortable about. I need to ask you something, and I need you to hear me out before you respond." I looked at him. "All right." He reached into his jacket and placed a business card on the table face down. and then he folded his hands over it, like he wasn't sure whether to leave it or take it back. Do you know what Meridian Property Holdings is? He asked. I shook my head. How about Eastgate Capital Group? No. He nodded slowly. How about a joint account at First Federal, opened 14 months ago, with a balance that's been used as collateral on approximately $4 million in business loans? The salmon sat in my stomach like a stone. I don't have any account like that, I said. He looked at me for a moment. Then he reached back into his jacket and placed a folded document on the table. He didn't open it. He just left it there between us. The account is in your name, he said. Your social security number, your address on Birchwood Lane, your signature or something that looks very much like it on the account agreement and on 3 separate loan applications. I stared at the document. I've been investigating your daughter's company for 7 months, he said. I work with the Financial Crimes Unit at the State Attorney's Office. We believe she has been using your identity to establish credit lines and collateral that her company could not otherwise qualify for. He paused. I'm not telling you this to frighten you. I'm telling you because in the morning, a subpoena is going to arrive at your home, and I wanted you to know what it means before it gets there. I looked across the ballroom. Vanessa was standing near the bar, holding a champagne flute, laughing at something the silver-haired woman had said. She looked the way she always looked when things were going exactly the way she'd planned, lit up from the inside, like a lamp someone had switched on. How long have you known? I asked. We've had enough to move on for about 2 months, he said. We wanted to make sure we had everything. And me? Did you think I knew? He looked at me steadily. We didn't know what you knew, he said. That's part of why I'm here. Talking to you directly, tonight, tells me what I needed to understand. Which is what? That you had no idea. I picked up my water glass and set it down again without drinking. She introduced me to her investors tonight, I said, as the family housekeeper. He was quiet for a moment. I know. I was watching. There is a particular kind of pain that doesn't come from outside you. It comes from the distance between who you believed someone was and who they have shown you they are. It's not sharp like a cut. It spreads. It fills the space where something warm used to be. I had loved Vanessa the way you love, the thing you've given everything to build, the way you love the proof that your sacrifices made sense. And sitting in that ballroom with a document I hadn't read yet sitting on the table in front of me, I understood that she had looked at that love, at all of it, the double shifts, and the used textbooks, and the 12-hour drive, and the pancakes alone in Fayetteville, and she had decided it was a resource. Not a gift. A resource. Something she could use. Richard Okafor left me his card and told me that someone from his office would call me the next morning. He told me I was not the target of the investigation. He told me that anything I chose to share would be voluntary but would be helpful. Then he stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked toward the exit without looking back at Vanessa. I sat for a few more minutes. Then I found my coat, said nothing to anyone, and asked the front desk to call me a cab. Vanessa texted me at 11:15. Great night. Did you enjoy yourself? Wasn't table 4 perfect? I read it twice. I put my phone face down on my nightstand and lay in the dark for a very long time. The subpoena arrived at 8:40 the next morning, just like he said it would. I sat at my kitchen table with it, and a cup of coffee that went cold before I'd taken more than 2 sips, and I read every line of it. Meridian Property Holdings, Eastgate Capital Group, 14 months, $4,200,000. My name, my address, my social security number, a signature that was almost mine, almost, but not quite the way I sign my name. Slightly too neat, slightly too deliberate. I had a moment, sitting there, when I almost called her. I want to be honest about that, because I think the honest thing is important. There was a moment when I almost picked up the phone and called my daughter, and said, tell me this isn't what it looks like, because I am a mother, and mothers do that. They look for the version of the story where their child is still good. They turn the thing over and over in their hands, looking for the angle where the light hits it differently. I didn't call her. Instead, I called Richard Okafor. He answered on the second ring. He sounded like he'd been awake for hours already. I'll come in, I said. Whatever you need me to tell you, I'll tell you. He was quiet for a beat. Thank you, Mrs. Chambers. Don't thank me, I said. Just tell me she won't go to prison. He was honest with me. He said he couldn't make promises, but he said that a parent who cooperated fully and testified to the timeline who could establish clearly that the identity had been used without consent, would give the prosecution what it needed without requiring the most serious charges to be pursued. He said it in careful legal language, but what he meant was, if I helped them understand what happened, they could afford to be less severe about what happened to her. That's what it cost me to protect her from the worst of it. Giving them everything, every document, every memory, every moment I could reconstruct. The time she borrowed my car for a weekend, and I found unfamiliar forms in the glove compartment, and she said they were nothing. The time she asked me to sign something she described as an insurance update, and I signed without my glasses, and she took it before I could read it back. The time she mentioned she was expanding, and said she had taken care of the financing, I gave them all of it. I sat in a beige office for 4 hours, and I answered every question, and when the young woman across the table asked me how I felt about what my daughter had done, I said, I feel like I failed her somewhere, and I feel like she failed me. Both things are true. She wrote it down. Vanessa was arrested on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after the dinner at the Harborview Grand. She called me from the police station, and her voice was the voice of the 9-year-old girl. I remembered frightened, cracked open, nothing smooth or practiced about it at all. Mom, she said. Mom, please. I gripped the phone very hard. I know, I said. I know, sweetheart. I need you to. I can't, I said. I already told them everything. I had to. Vanessa, you used my name, you used my life. You borrowed it without asking, and you put it at risk without telling me, and then you stood me in front of the people you were defrauding and called me the housekeeper. My voice broke on that last word, just slightly, just enough to let some of the pressure out. You looked me in my face and you were ashamed of me. She was crying. I could hear it. I know, she whispered. I know what I did. I love you, I said. I'm going to love you every day for the rest of my life. But I'm not going to lie for you. I'm not going to be something you use again. I don't know what I expected her to say. Maybe I expected her to argue. Maybe I expected the smooth, practiced version of her to come back on the line, the one who managed every detail, who arranged the pearl earrings and the car service and the seat at table 4, but she didn't say anything for a long time. She just cried. Finally, she said, I know, Mom. I'm sorry. I believed her. I don't know if I was right to believe her, but I believed her. Her attorney got the charges reduced significantly because I cooperated and because the investigation determined that I had been, clearly and completely, a victim without any knowledge or participation. Vanessa pled guilty to 2 counts of financial fraud and 1 count of identity theft. She was sentenced to 18 months of supervised probation, 200 hours of community service, full restitution to the creditors, and the dissolution of Meridian Property Holdings and Eastgate Capital Group. The investors lost money. Some of them lost a great deal of money. That is something I think about. Because they were also deceived. And I have no comfort to offer them except that I told the truth as completely as I could when it mattered. Vanessa's company was finished. The red dress and the champagne and the silver-haired woman from the mayor's office, all of it, gone. She moved into a small apartment in Greensboro and took a job managing accounts at a property firm. Ordinary work, the kind that doesn't require the ballroom of the Harborview Grand. I didn't hear from her much in the first year. A card at Christmas. A brief phone call on my birthday, where we talked about small things, the weather, whether I'd seen a movie she'd heard was good, and avoided the large things by silent mutual agreement, the way you avoid a room in a house where something terrible happened. You know it's there. You just don't go in yet. I went back to my life. I volunteered twice a week at the free clinic off Route 9. I had dinner with my neighbour Patricia on Thursday evenings. I kept the small routines that held me together, the early morning coffee, the crossword, the Saturday walk around the reservoir. The pearl earrings went into the back of my jewellery box, and after a month I took them out again and put them in a small paper bag and gave them to the donation bin at the church thrift store, and I felt better after that. I thought about resentment sometimes. I looked at it directly. The way you're supposed to look at things you don't want to carry forever. What she had done was not a mistake. It was not a lapse in judgment or a moment of desperation. It was calculated. She had looked at her mother and made a decision, again and again, over 14 months, that I was something she could use to build the life she wanted. She had practiced my signature. She had put my name on loan documents. She had thought through every step and taken it without a tremor of hesitation. And then she had introduced me to the people she was defrauding as her housekeeper. I sat with all of that. I did not pretend it wasn't what it was. But I also remembered her at 9 years old, standing in the hallway outside her father's hospital room, not crying yet because she didn't understand yet, and the way she slipped her hand into mine when the doctor came out of the room. I remembered the way she used to fall asleep during long car rides with her head tilted to the left, and how she'd say she was absolutely not asleep, and then immediately fall back asleep. I remembered her graduation from NC State, standing in the sunlight in a black cap and gown, holding her diploma up and finding my face in the crowd. Love is not a single thing. It is not one decision made once. It is 1,000 small decisions made every day. And sometimes the person you love makes it very hard to keep making them, and you make them anyway. I kept making them, 18 months after the dinner at the Harbourview Grand, on a Sunday afternoon in October, when the leaves on the oak in my backyard had gone completely amber. Vanessa knocked on my front door. She wasn't wearing anything expensive. She had on jeans and a plain sweater, and her hair was back in a clip. And she looked younger than she had in years, younger and more tired and more real. I stood at the door for a moment. "I brought coffee," she said, holding up 2 paper cups from the place on Elm Street that I've gone to for 20 years. She knew what I ordered. She's always known. I stepped back and let her in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd read the subpoena, the same table where I'd decided to call Richard Okafor, the same table where I'd eaten breakfast alone for 68 years of mornings, good ones, and terrible ones, and we drank the coffee. She talked for a long time. She talked about when it had started, not with greed, she said, but with fear. The company had struggled from the beginning, far more than she'd let anyone see, and she had been too proud to ask for help and too frightened to admit failure. She talked about the first time she'd borrowed my name, just briefly, just for one small account, and how easy it had been, and how that ease had been the most dangerous thing that ever happened to her. She talked about shame. She talked about how the version of herself who stood in that ballroom and called me the housekeeper was a version of herself she had built specifically to not feel things, to not feel the guilt about what she was doing, to not feel the fear about what would happen, to not feel how wrong it was. She had built a very impressive-looking container for all of that not feeling, and she had put me in it and called it success. She said, "The worst part of that night wasn't getting caught. The worst part was seeing your face." I looked at her across the table. "I've sat with that for a year and a half," she said. "Your face when those men walked away. You didn't say anything. You just sat there." "I had to put it somewhere," I said. She nodded like she understood, and I think she did. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. "I'm not here to ask for that. I'm here because I need you to know that I know what I did. I know all of it, and I need you to know that when I think about who I want to be, who I actually want to be, not who I was building, it's you." I looked at her for a long time. "It's always been you," she said, quietly. "You just made it look so easy that I forgot it was something you were choosing. Every day." I reached across the table and I put my hand over hers. "It wasn't easy," I said. "Not one day of it." She was crying again, not the frightened 9-year-old crying from the police station, something quieter and more deliberate, the kind of crying that has thought about itself and decided to happen anyway. "I know," she said. "I know that now." We stayed at the table for a long time after that. The coffee went cold, and the afternoon light moved across the kitchen floor, the way it does in October, that particular low amber light that makes everything look like something you want to hold on to. I thought about forgiveness, what it was, what it wasn't. It wasn't a door you opened and walked through once, and everything was different on the other side. It was more like a direction, a choice about which way to face. I am 68 years old. I have held the hands of dying strangers and found the right words in the worst moments. I have driven 12 hours alone and eaten pancakes in a diner in Fayetteville and cried the whole way home. I have signed subpoenas and sat in beige offices and said hard things into phones when I would rather have said easy things. I have also had a daughter who needed me to choose which way to face. Every day, I chose the same direction I always had. I told her I would not forget. I told her that trust is built slowly, and what she had broken would take a long time to repair, and that I needed her to understand that before we went any further. I told her the pearl earrings were at the church thrift store, and we both laughed, and it was a real laugh, the kind that doesn't require a practiced face or a ballroom or a champagne flute. Just 2 women at a kitchen table in October, with cold coffee, and all of it still to figure out. She came back the following Sunday. and the Sunday after that. I don't know how this story ends. I'm still in the middle of it. The way most real stories work, no clean resolution, no final accounting, just one morning after another, and the choices you make in each of them. What I know is this. I sat at table 4 and I stayed silent because silence was what I had. And then I went home and I read a subpoena, and I made a phone call, and I told the truth, because truth was what I had after that. And then I spent 18 months walking around a reservoir on Saturday mornings and having dinner with Patricia on Thursdays, and I sat with the love and the anger and the grief until they settled into something I could carry without it breaking me. And when she knocked on my door with 2 cups of coffee, I stepped back and let her in, not because she deserved it, not because everything was fixed, but because I am her mother, and she is the thing I chose to love when I was young enough to believe that love was simple, and I have been choosing it every day since, through all the complicated years, and I was not going to stop now. Nobody can hurt you like a child can hurt you. The hurt goes places that nothing else reaches, but nothing else reaches the other places either. I keep going. I face the direction I want to go, and I keep going,